Donald Trump threw Vladimir Zelensky out of the Oval Office on Friday, claiming the Ukrainian president is not ready for peace. Trump later said Zelensky disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. Zelensky told Trump before being thrown out that I can't possibly enter into peace talks with Putin unless Ukraine has guarantees the ceasefire is permanent. Zelensky said that Putin has broken his promises to Ukraine dozens of times. American weapons are no longer flowing into Ukraine, but European allies signaling to Zelensky after Friday's meeting they will help Ukraine without Trump. The New York Times reporting France, Germany, Poland, Spain, Denmark, the Netherlands, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Norway, Finland, Croatia, Estonia, Latvia, Slovenia, Belgium, Lithuania, Luxembourg, and Ireland, all signaling Friday they stand with Zelensky, they stand with Trump, not Putin, not Russia. This was after what can only be described as the most offensive public display inside the Oval Office ever. 14 Democratic governors issuing a joint statement condemning Trump's treatment of Zelensky. They wrote, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance used the sacred Oval Office to berate President Zelensky for not trusting Vladimir Putin's word. Americans must protect our strong democratic values on the world stage instead of undermining President Zelensky's work to fight for his nation and the freedom of his people after being invaded by Russia. You can't even get members of the Trump administration to say Ukraine was invaded by Russia. In fact, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, late Friday saying Zelensky came into the Oval Office antagonistic and rude. Zelensky was asked on Fox News after the meeting if he owed Trump an apology. Zelensky refused to answer, other than saying the meeting wasn't good for Ukraine or America. New reporting coming out that Zelensky was literally kicked out of the Trump White House. It was gather up your belongings and get out of here. Lindsey Graham now calling on Zelensky to resign. Jeanne Shaheen, the senator from New Hampshire, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, accusing Trump and Vance of siding with a quote-unquote murderous thug, Putin, over our democratic ally, Ukraine. She called the meeting, quote, disgraceful and downright un-American. Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader, called Trump's behavior appalling. But Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said, quote, thanks to President Trump, the days of America being taken advantage of and disrespected are over. What we witnessed in the Oval Office today was an American president putting America first. Russian state media and former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, now deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, agreed with the Republicans and praised Trump's behavior and urging Trump to stop giving him weapons.
Audio problems.
I'm sorry?
Audio. Can't hear you.
There's no audio?
There is, but very.
The audio is low. Well, let me see what I can do here. The audio is low. Let me check with the chat room. Is the audio low? Is that correct? It shouldn't be. I'm getting, let me check. Is the audio okay? I can't tell. I'm getting a signal that the audio is too low. Audio is great, I'm being told. I'm using the wrong audio is good. I can hear you okay. Somebody's saying, yep, you're using the wrong mic. I need good. Audio is fine. It seems to be. Leonard is the.
Yeah, he's there.
Sounds good. It's not low. I can hear you. Not great, but we can hear. Change mics. You are good. Hard to hear. What is going on? Damn it. Let me see here. Well, I think it's okay. A little low, yes, it's okay. No. Does no mean it's good? I hear you fine. The audio is good. It's good. I'm going to continue. All right. I have no choice. Turn your volume up. I'll shout. This is the mop-up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Can you hear me? Thank you for finding me. Please share this episode with your friends. West Exec Advisors was founded in 2017. It's made up of former Obama staffers using their connections to lobby on behalf of the weapons manufacturers. By 2021, when Joe Biden took office, his foreign policy was essentially driven by West Exec, which again lobbied on behalf of weapons manufacturers. By my count, 25 West Exec lobbyists, although technically they are not called lobbyists, but 25 West Exec lobbyists took high-profile jobs inside the Biden administration. Tony Blinken, the founder of West Exec, became Biden's Secretary of State. The job as Secretary of State is to negotiate peace, but Blinken came into the job as a former lobbyist for arms manufacturers. Again, that's what West Exec does. It greases the wheels for weapons manufacturers. Jen Psaki left West Exec to become Joe Biden's press spokesman or spokesperson. Psaki, who is white, now has the MSNBC job once belonging to Joy Reid, who is black. Avril Haines left West Exec to become Director of National Intelligence. Lisa Monaco left West Exec to become Deputy Attorney General. The Biden administration was lousy with West Exec executives. Even our Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, a retired four-star general in the United States Army, was serving on the board of directors of Raytheon, a defense contractor, before joining the Biden administration. He wasn't with West Exec, he was with Raytheon. And Joe Biden spent every Thanksgiving during his presidency inside the home of David Rubenstein, the founder of the Carlyle Group, possibly the world's largest investor in defense weapons or offense weapons. This is Joe Biden awarding Rubenstein the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Well deserved. When Ukraine invaded Ukraine, when Russia invaded Ukraine, one of Joe Biden's selling points to the American people for providing military aid to Zelensky was, it's a jobs bill. In May of 2022, months after the Russian invasion, Joe Biden visited a Lockheed Martin plant in Alabama that made Javelin anti-tank weapons that were being sent to Ukraine. He presented repeatedly the supplementals for Ukraine as job creators here at home. Now, you can say whatever you want about President Biden and our involvement in Ukraine. But there is no denying that Joe Biden was, as the intelligence agencies might say, a Ukrainian asset. He was on the side of Ukraine, providing top secret intelligence to Ukraine and pushing a legislative agenda that would help Ukraine defeat Russia. Joe Biden was a Ukrainian asset. Was Biden a Ukrainian asset because he was controlled by flunkies inside our military-industrial complex who believe war is a permanent state of nature, so why not profit off it? Did he view the invasion of Ukraine as an opportunity to transfer our nation's wealth into the pockets of our weapons manufacturers? Or did he genuinely believe, as most of the leadership in Europe does, that Vladimir Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Union and invade parts of Eastern Europe? Did he believe that Zelensky, despite the Pandora Papers suggesting he's squirreling away some money overseas, did he believe that Zelensky is willing to die on his home turf to defend the country he loves? We know that Vice President Kamala Harris went to the Munich conference 3 years ago and warned Zelensky that Putin is going to try to kill him, and Zelensky said, "I'm staying in Ukraine." We can debate all of this from now until the return of Elvis. Personally, I think it's all of the above. But one thing that cannot be denied: Joe Biden was a Ukrainian asset. Inside the Oval Office, when Joe Biden was president, we had a Ukrainian asset. And now, with our new president and Friday's display inside the Oval Office, one thing can no longer be denied: Donald Trump is in fact a Russian asset. The irony should be lost on nobody that right behind our appeasement monkey for a president, Donald Trump, right behind him over there, is a bust of Winston Churchill. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance ambushed Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in the Oval Office on Friday.
The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think?
I've seen enough. That is, by its very definition, a Russian asset, Donald Trump, who then literally had the Ukrainian president thrown out of the White House. According to Politico, the Associated Press was not in the room. They're banned from the Oval Office because they don't refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. Reuters was also not allowed in the room. But you know who was in there Friday to capture Trump and Vance tag teaming Zelensky so Putin wouldn't miss a single beat? The news agency TASS. TASS, that's the Russian news agency serving as a propaganda arm for the Russian state. This thing was totally choreographed for Putin's benefit. The minerals deal fell through. It wasn't signed because Putin didn't want that deal signed, because most of the rare earth minerals are in eastern Ukraine, which Zelensky has annexed. That is a Russian asset. The purpose of the meeting supposedly was for Zelensky and Trump to sign an agreement turning over $500 billion worth of Ukrainian mineral rights to the United States. But Trump said not in return for future assistance from our country. This will all only be payback for all the money we've given to Ukraine so far. Trump is trying to now paint this as a deal where he has the bargaining chips and Zelensky doesn't. And what do? You take advantage of Zelensky. It's the typical boisterous posturing of a bully attempting to cover up the fact that he's terrified of Vladimir Putin. Trump was told, you're not getting $500 billion worth of mineral rights. Russia is. Blow up Blow up the deal, Donald. That was the order from Putin. Senator Lindsey Graham told Fox News, "That was the best television I have ever seen." Really? Better than David Hasselhoff topless in Baywatch? That was the best television Lindsey Graham has ever seen. He added, Lindsey Graham literally said this, "Now Putin's really afraid of Donald Trump." Seriously, Lindsey Graham said that. Lindsey is saying that Trump's willingness to bully Zelensky shows Putin how tough Donald Trump is. Tough Donald Trump is, like Trump would ever talk that way to Putin. The deal, like I said, for mineral rights never got signed. Why? Trump said Zelensky disrespected me and had him ushered off the premises. Trump blew up that deal on orders from from Putin. Trump and Vance in front of the media, in front of TASS, so Putin could see, berated Zelensky for, quote, using this meeting as an opportunity to make his case to the American people. Why else would he have come to the Oval Office? For Melania's pudding recipe? J.D. Vance lashed out at Zelensky for visiting a weapons factory in Pennsylvania. Vance said, quote, "Have you said thank you once in this entire meeting? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country," unquote. J.D. Vance, this is why when he lied about the Haitians eating cats and dogs, this is why character counts. J.D. Vance has zero character. Zelensky bit back because unlike J.D. Vance, who wore the uniform, Zelensky's seeing actual action in Ukraine. There's a price tag and crosshairs on Zelensky's head. Zelensky bit back and said, "Have you ever come to Ukraine once?" He said to J.D. Vance, and Vance responded, "Oh no, you bring your people, you bring them on a propaganda tour." Zelensky said of the threat from Putin, quote, he said this to Donald Trump, "You have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future." Trump shouted back, "Don't tell us what we're going to feel. You're in no position to dictate that." Trump said, quote, "You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you need to have the cards." Zelensky said, "I'm not playing cards. I'm very serious, Mr. President. I'm very serious." And then Vance interrupted like a fawning child sucking up to Donald Trump, quote, "Once again, have you said thank you once in this entire meeting? Have you ever seen behavior like this in the Oval Office?" Aaron Blake, writing over at the Washington Post Friday, suggested one of the things that set Trump off in the meeting was Zelensky having the temerity to correct Donald Trump in public after Trump wrongly corrected Zelensky. Zelensky correctly said that Russia seized Crimea without any foreign intervention back in 2014. And Trump, who may be the stupidest person in the world, said, no, it was 2015. And Zelensky looked at Trump and said, "No, my country was attacked in 2014, as in, I'm pretty sure I know when Crimea was seized." And Trump said, "Oh, 2014. But J.D. Vance, toady, chimed in saying, "Well, it was 2014 through 2015, so you're both right." What lack of character J.D. Vance has. What an effing worthless, dangerous bully J.D. Vance is. Trump was wrong. He shouldn't have corrected Zelensky. Zelensky has real balls, something Trump and Vance have never seen before. And he corrected Donald Trump. So, is there any doubt that Donald Trump is a Russian asset? Is there any doubt that the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party has made it clear they will give Putin whatever he wants in Ukraine, if not Ukraine? Is there any doubt that this is a president and a vice president who want to throw away the post-World War II configurations that have kept the peace in Europe since 1945, except for a brief war between Serbia and Kosovo in the 1990s? NATO and the EU have kept the peace, but there is no longer any doubt that this new Republican Party, remade in Donald Trump's image, wants to pivot away from Europe. And who will suffer from that? Europe and America. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin held their first summit in 2018 at Helsinki. During that post-summit press conference, AP reporter Jonathan Lemire asked Trump the following question. President Putin just denied any Russian interference in the U.S. election, but every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did in fact interfere in the election. Who do you believe? Simple question. Do you believe Putin or the American government? Trump answered. This was his answer. My people come to me, Dan Coates came to me and some others, they said they think it's Russia. But I have President Putin and he just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be. I don't see any reason why it would be Russia that tampered, meddled in the 2016 elections. Dan Coates, he brings up Dan Coates. Dan Coates was a longtime Republican senator from Indiana, Republican, who served as Donald Trump's first director of national intelligence, overseeing our country's 18 separate intelligence agencies. Dan Coates voted for Trump and told him after the election, I'm glad you won, but there is incontrovertible evidence that Vladimir Putin meddled in your favor and helped you win the 2016 presidential election. This was Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence. He oversees all 18 of our intelligence agencies. And in 2018, he said to Donald Trump, Putin helped you become president. And at Helsinki, Trump threw Dan Coates under the bus and said, I'm going to take Putin's word for it. Trump said he was willing to take Putin's denial over facts consistently laid out before him by the FBI and all our intelligence agencies. So this was 2018, and it didn't play well within the Republican Party. It was a different Republican Party back then. Senator John McCain said, disgraceful. No prior president has ever abased himself more abjectly before a tyrant. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said at the time, because John McCain was still alive, quote, missed opportunity to firmly hold Russia accountable for 2016 meddling, unquote. But now, Lindsey Graham insists that by throwing Zelensky out of the Oval Office, Trump now has Vladimir Putin shaking in his boots. Now, Lindsey Graham is saying Zelensky should resign. Well, having lost the popular vote in 2016 to Hillary Clinton, Trump couldn't live with the shame and, of course, the implications that Putin helped put him in the Oval Office. So he created the fiction of a deep, dark state, comprised of all the intelligence agencies and our FBI, who suggest he was an illegitimate president. They didn't call him an illegitimate president, but they concluded that Putin helped put him there. So the game Trump is playing is, it wasn't Putin meddling in American politics helping me to become president. No. It's the entire national security apparatus inside the United States that's against me. This is a 4-year-old. You're all against me. I'm right, you're wrong. This is why in Helsinki, Trump said he was willing to take Putin's word over the entire American government's. Dan Coates resigned as Director of National Intelligence on July 28, 2019, just 3 days after Trump's perfect call with Vladimir Zelensky, the call that resulted in Trump's first impeachment. I know this is a lot to process. Helsinki was 2018. The perfect call to Zelensky was 2019, right when Dan Coates, the Director of National Intelligence, resigned. Russia had not yet launched a full-scale invasion of Russia back in 2019 when Trump made the perfect call to Zelensky. It had seized Crimea. Russia had seized Crimea in 2014, not 2015, as Trump tried to insist on Friday. Russia not only seized Crimea in 2014, but it also began supporting Russian-speaking separatists in eastern Ukraine, where the rare earth minerals are. Many of those Russian-speaking separatists in eastern Ukraine are actually soldiers, Russian soldiers disguised as Russian-speaking Ukrainians. That's why Congress, with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, in 2019 authorized $250 million in military aid for Ukraine in 2019. Trump was president, but Pelosi was Speaker. This was military aid for Ukraine to fight off the Russian-speaking separatists inside eastern Ukraine, where all the rare earth minerals are. Again, this was 2019, the year Vladimir Zelensky, a comedian with a hit sitcom, got himself elected president of Ukraine. See, in America, we elect reality show stars. Ukraine elects people higher up the showbiz food chain. They go with sitcom stars. We're stuck with Trump. 2019, Zelensky gets elected president of Ukraine. Trump congratulates him in that perfect phone call and then tells Zelensky, I'm holding up that congressionally authorized shipment of roughly $250 million worth of military aid to you, unless you, Zelensky, can give me dirt on Joe Biden, who Trump figured was his most likely opponent in the upcoming 2020 election. Okay? I know it's a lot. Trump takes, let me just give you the chronology. Russia takes Crimea in 2014, Obama is president. Trump wins in 2016 with the help of Putin. Trump meets with Putin in Helsinki in 2018, takes Putin's word about Russia's meddling in our elections, not meddling in our elections. He takes Putin's word in Helsinki in 2018 over the word of our entire government. 2019, the Mueller report comes out in early 2019 and confirms that Putin did in fact throw the 2016 election in Trump's favor. Read the Mueller report. Okay, 2019, the Mueller report comes out and says Putin meddled in our 2016 election to help Trump win. 2019 is when Zelensky is also elected president of Ukraine. Congress authorizes $250 million in military aid to help Zelensky fight Russian-speaking separatists in eastern Ukraine, where all the rare earth minerals are. I'm salivating. Trump, in 2019, makes that perfect phone call to Zelensky, holding up the arms shipments to Ukraine, which led to Trump's first impeachment, because it's against the law for presidents to impound congressionally authorized funds. When you don't spend money authorized by Congress as president, it's a crime. It's called impounding funds. That is our new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, back in early 2020. She had just left her job as Florida's Attorney General and was working as one of Trump's defense attorneys in the first impeachment. Here she is. This is our current Attorney General, Pam Bondi, back in early 2020 during the Trump impeachment, defending Trump, saying Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are corrupt. Therefore, Trump was well within his right as commander-in-chief to withhold congressionally mandated military aid to Ukraine in exchange for dirt on a political opponent. In other words, she said, this is what our Attorney General said in 2020. If the President of the United States believes Joe Biden and Hunter are corrupt, you don't have to ask for a congressional investigation. You don't have to violate protocol and maybe ask the FBI to investigate. No! Instead, you send Rudy Giuliani to go to Ukraine, working off the books, and then violate the Constitution by withholding arms to Ukraine. Here is our idiot, immoral, and corrupt Attorney General, Pam Bottle Blonde Bondi.
No experience in the Ukraine, doesn't speak the language, and we clearly know that he had a very job description, and he did none of those things. He attended 1 or 2 board meetings, one in Monaco, and then he went on a fishing trip with Joe Biden's family in Norway.
You low-rent strip mall attorney. Hunter Biden went on a fishing trip with Joe Biden's family in Norway. Isn't Hunter Biden, isn't he a part of Joe Biden's family? And Norway? What does Norway have to do with Ukraine? Have you looked at a map, you moron? You worthless turd? Well, the shipment of arms to Ukraine was delayed 2 months. Trump broke the law and withheld a much-needed arms shipment to Zelensky for 2 months. Now, one would think, this is 2019, after siding with Putin against our entire intelligence apparatus at Helsinki in 2018, one would think the Mueller report had come out in 2019, proving Putin had in fact meddled in the 2016 election on behalf of Trump. One would think Trump would go out of his way not to look like a Putin puppet when he got on the phone with Zelensky in 2019. One would think, again, this is the same year the Mueller report came out. The Mueller report came out in April of 2019, saying Trump was elected president, partly because of Putin. A year earlier, Trump openly sided with Putin against our entire intelligence establishment, saying he's going to take Putin's word on Russian interference over our governments. All within 1 year this happened. And what does he do? From Helsinki to 2019, when he gets on the phone with Zelensky, he holds up a shipment of arms to Ukraine in Ukraine's battle against Vladimir Putin. If there was one way to prove you're not a Russian puppet, it would be, at the very least, making sure that arms shipment went ahead to Ukraine. But no, Donald Trump held it up for 2 months and would have held it up forever had there not been whistleblowers. As I said earlier, after that perfect call with Zelensky in 2019, Dan Coats resigned as Director of National Intelligence. 3 days after the perfect call, the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, Republican from Indiana, quit as Director of National Intelligence. Last year, Dan Coats gave an interview to Bob Woodward saying he was convinced Putin was blackmailing Trump at the time, unquote. Google it. Get the Woodward book. This stuff is a waterfall of indictments, and it's hard to keep track of all this. Google Dan Coats, Director of National Intelligence, Republican, tells Bob Woodward he was convinced Putin was blackmailing Trump at the time. Director of National Intelligence, in charge of all our intelligence agencies, Republican from Indiana, Dan Coats, said last year Putin was blackmailing Trump. And the yawn in this country, deafening. Nobody, oh, okay, all right. Now, this all goes back to before Trump was even elected president. I am rereading American Compromat by Craig Unger. If you want to read who I believe to be the best writer on this, pick up the books of the great Craig Unger. He's written extensively on Trump being a Russian asset. Craig Unger says there is no question that Trump is a Russian asset. What Unger says, and it's really interesting, is he may not be breaking the law. There's counterintelligence operations, and then there are criminal investigations. Craig Unger says because of our laissez-faire laws, Trump may not be breaking any of them. This is the work of the CIA and the DNI to do counterintelligence on Trump because he's either a willing or unwilling Russian asset who may not be breaking the law. Craig Unger, in the book American Compromat, he writes that in 2016, before Hillary lost to Donald Trump, Michael Morell, the former director of the CIA, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. You can Google this. It's in the New York Times. It's August 5th, 2016. In this op-ed piece by Michael Morell, he says, in the intelligence business, we would say that Mr. Putin had recruited Mr. Trump as an unwitting agent of the Russian Federation, unquote. So I'm reading Craig Unger's book, and I looked up the article in the New York Times. This is from August 5th, 2016. It's written by Michael Morell, the former director of the CIA. During a 33-year career at the Central Intelligence Agency, I served presidents of both parties, 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. I was at President George W. Bush's side when we were attacked on September 11th. As deputy director of the CIA, I was with President Obama when we killed Osama bin Laden in 2011. I am neither a registered Democrat nor a registered Republican. In my 40 years of voting, I have pulled the lever for candidates of both parties. As a government official, I have always been silent about my preference for president. No longer, on November 8th, I will vote for Hillary Clinton. Between now and then, I will do everything I can to ensure that she is elected as our 45th president. two strongly held beliefs that have brought me to this decision. First, Mrs. Clinton is highly qualified to be Commander-in-Chief. I trust she will deliver on the most important duty of a president, keeping our nation safe. Second, Donald J. Trump is not only unqualified for the job, but he may well pose a threat to our national security. Craig Unger, in his other book, House of Trump, House of Putin, writes in 2017 that former National Intelligence Director James Clapper called Trump, quote, an intelligence asset serving Vladimir Putin. Yes, I know Clapper probably committed perjury on March 12, 2013, during a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing when he denied that the NSA was spying on American citizens. But how was he supposed to know Edward Snowden would leak all those documents 3 months later? Clapper probably perjured himself. But it's adding up that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. Craig Unger writes in American Compromise. Pick up Craig Unger's books. He writes in American Compromise that former CIA Director John Brennan in 2019 said, Trump is wholly in the pocket of Putin. And you can Google all this. Brennan, CIA Director Brennan, appeared on Meet the Press and called Trump's behavior, quote, treasonous, which is to betray one's trust and aid and abet the enemy, and I stand very much by that claim, unquote. Watching the display in the Oval Office on Friday, do you have any doubt that Donald Trump is a Russian asset? Congress allocated an arms shipment to Ukraine, and Trump had held it up for 2 months in 2019. He would have held it up longer, but Vindman, the whistleblower, got exposed and he got impeached. But he tried to help Putin by not delivering $250 million worth of weapons to Zelensky in 2019. And you know who was the acting director of the Office of Budget and Management back then? Russell Vought. He was the one who officially delayed that shipment for 2 months. He released the arms to Ukraine only after there was an investigation into Trump's perfect call, and the jig was up, and he had to release the arms to Ukraine. Now, this was in direct violation of the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which forbids a president, and more precisely, the president's Office of Management and Budget, from withholding funds appropriated by Congress. The Supreme Court, after the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, I think it was like in 1996, the Supreme Court ruled that presidents lack the authority to execute what is called a line item veto. They say a president by law, this is what the Supreme Court said, and it's in our Constitution, it's in the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, the president is not allowed to decide which budgetary items are legitimate and which ones are not, because Article 1 of the Constitution says Congress has the power of the purse. When Congress authorizes funding, the president is breaking the law by impounding that funding. Impounding means holding on to it and not releasing it. But Russell Vought was just confirmed to serve once again as director of Office of Management and Budget, even though when he was asked during his confirmation hearings in February, he was asked about the right of a president not to spend congressionally authorized money. Russell Vought, one of the authors of Project 2025, Russell Vought testified, I believe the president, he said, I believe this despite the law, despite the Supreme Court, despite the Constitution, he believes the president has the right to spend congressionally, has the right not to spend congressionally authorized money. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode so I can remain in your feed. Please share this episode. I've resigned myself to the fact that they are throttling back my shows. It's harder to find me. I accept it. It just makes me want to fight harder. It is harder to find this show. South Korea's intelligence agency reporting thousands of North Koreans have been killed fighting on Russia's side in Ukraine. This after 11,000 North Korean troops deployed to fight alongside Russian soldiers last year. The South Korean intelligence agency says North Korean troops pulled back after sustaining casualties in the tens of thousands. Russia is not winning in Ukraine. It is a war of attrition. It is a stalemate. With reports now of North Korea supplying 3,000 fresh soldiers into the meat grinder, Trump said on Friday, I want peace. Well, we all want peace. But what would peace look like? By all accounts, it means giving Putin everything he wants. Whenever a Trump spokesperson is asked, what concessions does Putin have to make for peace? The message is none. None. They don't have any concessions for Putin, the invader. Only concessions for the invaded. Because why? It's Ukraine that has to give up land and mineral rights for peace. Who do you think is going to end up with the mineral rights when all is said and done? America or Putin? Europe, and I'm talking about Great Britain as well, France, Germany, even Italy, which right now is being run by fascists, they all believe Vladimir Putin is an existential threat to Eastern and possibly Western Europe. The day before Zelensky arrived, Keir Starmer, Great Britain's prime minister, visited the Oval Office and urged Donald Trump not to abandon Ukraine or NATO. Trump lied and said, I still support Ukraine. A member of the press then said, how can you say you support Ukraine when you just called Zelensky a dictator? Last week, Trump called Zelensky a dictator for not holding elections in the middle of a war. And Trump responded when he was asked, how can you say you support Ukraine when you call Zelensky a dictator? Trump responded, did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question. The UN issued a condemnation on Monday calling for Putin to withdraw. It was the third anniversary of the illegal invasion of Ukraine, and the UN passed a resolution condemning the invasion, calling it an invasion, and demanding that Putin pull out. Donald Trump said, we're not signing that. We didn't sign that. You know who didn't sign that? North Korea and Russia. During his first cabinet meeting, is there any doubt we have a Russian asset in the Oval Office? And again, like Craig Unger writes, it may not be illegal, but there's no denying we have a Russian asset in the Oval Office. During Donald Trump's first cabinet meeting earlier in the week, Trump made it clear he wanted to turn his back on Europe. He said, quote, the EU, the European Union, was formed in order to screw the United States, and they've done a good job of it. But now I'm president. This was part of his plans to impose 25% tariffs on European imports, but part of a larger piece that he and Vance in his Munich speech are advancing, signaling they want America to pivot away from Europe towards authoritarian governments propped up by Putin. The New York Times reporting Trump lied in his very first cabinet meeting when he said the United States has given more to Ukraine than the European Union and the United Kingdom. Well, so far, that's a lie. Not counting humanitarian assistance, America has given Ukraine $119 for defense. That doesn't include humanitarian assistance. America has given Ukraine $119 for defense, while the European Union and Great Britain have given a total of $138 billion. But Trump continues to lie and insist America has given Ukraine $350 billion, and he wants it back in the form of mineral rights to those rare earths in Ukraine. Friday, Zelensky was supposed to sign a deal turning over $500 billion worth of mineral rights, and it didn't get signed. Trump purposely, I know he purposely blew up this deal because Putin said, "You're not getting the mineral rights. Why do you think I'm in eastern Ukraine? So you could have the mineral rights?" Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was in Ukraine last week negotiating this $500 billion rare earth deal with Zelensky. It is one of the most offensive foreign policy arrangements in American history. Friday's display in the Oval Office was the most offensive thing I've ever seen in the Oval Office. This rare earth deal is the most offensive foreign policy arrangement in American history. Bessent, when the deal was still alive, said, "I call it an economic security guarantee." In other words, our turd of a Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said, the United States is more willing to fight for titanium, lithium, and uranium than it is for the people of Ukraine. Zelensky, by the way, originally proposed sharing mineral rights when Biden was president. Trump is acting like it was his idea. I'm the big deal maker. This was Zelensky's idea. But according to the New York Times, the money would go towards rebuilding Ukraine and providing more weapons. That was the deal that he was striking with Biden. Trump says negotiating for parts of Ukraine's mineral rights would only be to get paid back for what America already spent, not to guarantee future security. When British Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited earlier in the week, Starmer said he would be willing to send peacekeepers into Ukraine if you can get a deal. Trump said, if Europe wants to send in peacekeepers, they're going to have to go it alone. Trump lied again, telling reporters that Ukraine's request to join NATO is, quote, probably the reason the whole thing started. That's a lie. And what Trump does is he takes a germ of truth and perverts it. Ukraine expressed interest at the time of the invasion. They expressed interest in joining the European Union, the economic bloc that is the European Union. They didn't want to join NATO. They want to join NATO. They've always wanted to join NATO. But at the time of the invasion in 2022, Ukraine wasn't trying to join NATO. Why did Putin invade Ukraine? Well, Putin has told us why. He says it's a part of Russia. Putin doesn't see any difference between the Ukrainian people and the Russian people, and he said Ukraine is part of what he calls Greater Russia. Having Ukraine back in the fold, he said, makes Ukraine whole. He believes, going back centuries, because of the ethnicity, that Ukraine is part of Russia's DNA. Now, I'm not diminishing the threat of having a Western ally buttressed right up against the Russian border. There is no question he has a right not to want a NATO member on his border. But that's not why he invaded Ukraine. He invaded because of the rare earth minerals, the coal, the oil, and he doesn't recognize Ukraine as a sovereign state. He's trying to rebuild the old Soviet Union. Donald Trump was caught on tape earlier in the week saying America should be on the side of Russia. This is what the genius Donald Trump said. I honestly can't imagine that anyone in their right mind would be picking Ukraine as an ally when Russia is the other option. The U.S. should have been sending weapons to Russia, unquote. Well then, we can disagree about a lot of things, but this is a fact. For better or worse, Donald Trump is, by its very definition, a Russian asset. Right, Donald?
The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. I mean, your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think?
That's AI. I ran it through. There's a filter where you can give Trump something resembling a Russian asset. But full disclosure, that is not Donald Trump. That is a filter of Donald Trump. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you enjoyed any of this, I don't know what was enjoyable about any of this, but please share this episode. I need my audience to help me out. I'm being throttled back. This is not the kind of show. Nobody's doing me any favors to spread this show. I'm not going to get into it, but it's you know what's going on. So please, if you enjoyed this, please share this with your friends. Subscribe to my newsletter. Follow me on Blue Sky. You can follow me on Blue Sky. Thank you to Bob and Mila. I think Leonard might have been in the chat. My nephew Leonard might have been there. Thank you for keeping the conversation civil. I read all your comments. If you're a long-time listener, you know I read your comments. If I made a mistake, please correct me in the comment section. What are you going to do? We got to fight for our country. Legally, peacefully fight for our country. Read Mandela. Read Dr. King. Read Ralph Nader. Read Gandhi. We will win. He's going to hurt people, but we will win. Get to work. You have a phone, use it. You have a pen, get a postcard. Protest, but don't get arrested. Don't put yourself in a situation where the police have control over you. So don't do anything stupid. Go to the protests, but if you smell anything with a whiff of illegality, get the F out of there and fight the long game, because that's what they're doing. Okay? Thank you.